Cumulative frequency. So we've already got frequency, which is just plain how many. So what do we mean by cumulative frequency? It's what I refer to as keeping a running total. So let's demonstrate it, because that's probably the easiest way to understand it. So in terms of frequencies here, we've got 12, 30, 28, 22 and 8. So the cumulative frequency, the first one will be identical, it'll be 12. Now to get the second one, we're going to add the 12 to the next number, the 30. So that gives us 42. Then we're going to take the 42 and add on 28 to get the next one. So that's going to give us 70. Then we add on the 22 to the 70 to get 92. And finally, we add on the 8 to get 100, which agrees with what it says at the top here, that there were 100 teachers in this case in this situation. So that is the cumulative frequency and how we work it out. So now let's look at how we plot a cumulative frequency graph. Now they all have a telltale shape to them that looks something like an elongated S shape. So we plot these cumulative frequencies against the ends of the intervals, not the beginning. Okay, so these aren't bars, these are dots. So the end of the first one is 30. So my first dot is going to go in at here, and we want 12. We've got a scale of 10 squares for 20, so each square is worth 2. So 6 is about there. That's as accurate as I can do with a pen like this. The next one is going to go on at 40, and that's going to go in at 42. So that's going to be here. The next one is going against 50, and that's got to be 70, so that's here. And then next one is 92 against 60, and that's going to go, there's 90, so there's 92. And finally we've got 100 against the 70 that goes there. Now we also need to know where it joins at the beginning here. So that's the end. Where does it join? So the first part of this is 20. So we do a dot there, if you like, there. So that'll give you your full curve. So this then, as I say, don't use a ruler for joining this up because it is meant to be a curve. This is quite a flat S shape, but it does have a little bit of a kink there. Okay, so that's how we draw cumulative frequencies. We'll come back to that in a minute, because cumulative frequencies is linked up with another type of diagram that we're going to look at, and some other terms that we need to be familiar with, and then we're going to associate with our cumulative frequency graphs. So these are called box plots, or sometimes box and whisker plots, and when we've drawn one, I think you'll see why it's given that name. So here we've been given some information about 50 male rugby players. So we know the lowest weight, the highest weight, and then we've got the median weight, which obviously is the middle weight. And then we've got two other terms here. We've got the lower quartile and the upper quartile. As the second word sounds, it's like the quarter. So the lower quarter is a quarter, or I tend to think of it more in percentage terms, so that's 25%, and the upper quartile is 3/4 or 75% of the data. Okay, so what it's telling us, the lower quartile is 74, so that means that the bottom quarter or 25% of rugby players weigh less than 74. Conversely, the upper quartile is 88, so that tells us that the top 25% weigh more than 88 and less than 100, because that's our highest number there. So we've got to draw a box plot to do this. So before we can do that, we need a bit of a scale here. So we're going from 68 up to 100 roughly. Okay, so I'm going to suggest that we try and go from 60 to 100 to make life easier for ourselves. So let's see. So that would mean we'd need 40. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that works just fine. So I'm going to call this 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. Okay, so the lowest one was 68, and this is going to form part of what's known as the whiskers, but for the time being we're just going to do a vertical line, and all the vertical lines we do need to be the same height. It doesn't matter what the height is, but they all need to be the same. So 68 is here, so I'm going to do it that high. The lower quartile is 74, so we're going to put a line in for that here. The median is 82, the upper quartile is 88, and then finally our highest is 100. So this is where we're now going to turn everything into a box and its whiskers. So the box is made by joining up the upper and lower quartiles, so the median sits in the middle of it, and then these two here we join up to the box by drawing a line halfway down the box, so to speak, and out. So here's our box and these are our whiskers here. Okay, so we'll do another one below here. This time we've got female rugby players apparently. Okay, and I'm going to have a look. It tells us that the lightest is 51, the lower quartile is 60, and the median is 71. Now, it tells us that the interquartile range and the range is the same as for the men. So we're going to have to do a bit of working out here before we know what the upper quartile and the highest is. So let's look at the range first of all. So the range of this one here is 100 take away 68, so that's 32. So our lowest here is 51, so our highest would have to be 32 more than that. So our highest is going to be 51 plus the 32, that's the same range from here, so that means it's going to be 83. We're going to do the same sort of thing to work out our upper quartile, usually abbreviated just as a U and a Q. So we're going to need the lower quartile, which is 60, and we're told that the interquartile range, which is what you get when you take the lower quartile from the upper quartile, is the same as up here. So 88 take away 74 gives me 14. So the upper quartile must be 14 more than the lower quartile. So 60 plus 14 is going to give me 74. Okay, so we're going to look again. So we've got to go between 50 at the smallest and 80 or 90, I'm going to say, at the top here. So I'm going to use a similar sort of scale. So we're going to go 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, just trying to get it to sit roughly in the middle. So lightest was 51, so we draw a line there. Lower quartile was 60, median was 71, upper quartile we worked out as being 74, and the highest was 83. So then we form up our box. Obviously you'll be doing this with a ruler when you do it. Okay, so there's our box. Sorry, I went over a bit. And then just do lines here in the middle to do our whiskers. Okay, so the box, the ends of the box are the lower quartile and the upper quartile. So remember those terms, because we're going to look at those terms again when it comes to cumulative frequency. So here we go. This time our cumulative frequency graph has already been drawn for us. So you can see this nice curve, although they've been a bit naughty because they've done straight lines, which isn't really how you're supposed to do it. And underneath it asks us to work out an estimate of the median from our diagram. So the median is at the 50% mark. 50% of what? So the very top of our graph is 80 in this case. So it's 50% of 80. So 50% of 80, or half of 80, is 40. Now that's not the answer, but that tells us where to go across. So we're going to go across from here, because this is our median line, and then down carefully as we can down here. So it's bigger than 6 and less than 8, and let me just have a look. So that would be 7 in the middle there. So that is going to be 6.2 minutes in this particular context. The next thing it asks for is the interquartile range. Now this is frequently abbreviated to just IQR. So in order to do the interquartile range, we need the upper quartile, and then we're going to take away the lower quartile. Remember that the upper quartile is at 75%, the lower quartile is at 25%. And again, we're talking about 80, quarter of 80, 3/4 of 80. So a quarter of 80 is 20. So our lower quartile will be here and our upper quartile will be here. So again, it's a question of going across to our line and down. So that's going to be, our lower quartile is going to be 4.4, and our upper quartile is going to be 7.6. So we've got to do 7.6, take away 4.4. That's going to leave us with 3.2 minutes in this case as our interquartile range. Okay, so let's just do one more where we do look at all of those things and include another box plot as well. So again, we've already got the curve drawn on here. They really are naughty. This is because it's difficult on a computer, so they've got straight lines, but when you draw them, they should be curves. Okay, so first of all, we need to find the median. So remember, that's at the 50% mark. What's our top mark here? It's 40. So the median is going to be here at 20. So we go across to our graph and down, and that tells us that 100 seconds is the estimate of our median here. Next, it asks us for the interquartile range. Remember, that's the upper quartile minus the lower quartile. The upper quartile is going to be at 75%, or 3/4 of the 40. So that's going to be here at 30. And the lower quartile is going to be down here at 1/4 of 40, which is 10. So the upper quartile, if we go across to the line and then down. Okay, let me just read the scale there. So that's 1 for 1. So that's going to be 106. Do the same for the lower quartile. Drop down. So that's going to be 93 there. So 106 take away 93 is going to give me 13 seconds in this case. So then they ask us to draw a box plot of this information as well as the cumulative frequency. So they've already put a scale on for us. So it's about reading off the graph. So what was the lowest? So the lowest here was 70. So we're going to put our first line in here at 70. Then our lower quartile we worked out just now as being 93. So that's going to go here. Our median we worked out to be 100. And then our upper quartile was 106. And finally, our maximum, our highest is here, which is 120. So then we form our box in the middle, and then from the middle out to the whiskers, like so. Okay, I'm just going to talk about one last aspect that is quite common with cumulative frequency questions. Okay, so here we can see they've actually done the proper curves this time. We've got a boy's curve on the top and a girl's curve underneath. Okay, now it does ask us to do some estimating from that. I've covered that bit. I'm looking at this second part here where it says make two comparisons between the distributions of the boys' and girls' scores. Okay, so two comparisons. What are they wanting you to compare? They want you to compare the median of both with the interquartile ranges of both. So in order to compare those, you've actually got to work out what they are. So the top number is 100 here. So for both of them, the median is going to be here at 50. The lower quartile is going to be at 25, so that's 30. So there is our lower quartile. And if we add 25 to 50, we get 75, and that's where our upper quartile is. So if we go across here, and we need to go to both of them at that point. So for the boys and the girls, so for the boys, the upper quartile is, if we come down from the boys, we're going to hit 32. And for the girls, it's a bit further over. And so I would say that is 36. The median for the boys, if we go over here, boys comes down here, so that's 24. And for the girls, the median again is a bit larger, so it's dropping down here to 31. Even though you can kind of see it on the diagram, you do need to get the exact numbers. That's part of the scoring that you'll get here, the mark scheme. And then for the lower quartiles, let's go across here. And so for the boys, that's about 12.5. I'll just call it 12 to make life easier for ourselves here. So 32 minus 12 is going to give us 20 as our interquartile range there. And for the girls, that's coming down at 22. So 36 minus 22 is going to give us 14. So now we've done the number crunching. Now what you've got to do is just say what you've found. So what we can say about the median is that the median for the girls is bigger by 7 marks. This is a test thing, so it's bigger by 7. Okay, so that's one of our comparisons. So the second one is looking at the interquartile range. So this time we can see that the interquartile range for the boys is wider than it is for the girls. So we could say the interquartile range is bigger for the boys by 6. Now that's not necessarily a good thing, because it means that there's more variation in the boys' scores than there is in the girls' scores. Anyway, so that's what you need to do if it's a comparison. Two comparisons, it's the median and the interquartile range, and you need to go and get the facts and figures, so to speak, from the diagram before you do the writing part of the comparisons.